Good afternoon. With me today is Marjolein Hoekstra, who is very much involved in the Microsoft education community. And you may have seen Marjolein involved in things like the TweetMeets and the Teams EDU blog and community. And also she manages a series of links for educators that are really useful. Hi, Marjolein, how are you today?
I'm doing just great. Thank you, Darren, so much for inviting me to this show. It's a delight. Thank you.
It's lovely to have you here. So before we get into the detail of the resources that you're going to share with folks, do you want to tell us how you kind of came to what you're doing these days?
Yeah, so I've been involved in all kinds of different jobs actually, but in the past, let's say 7 or 8 years, I've been diving really deep into Microsoft OneNote. And one of the things I designed at that time was as an example of what I was thinking Microsoft OneNote should look like, and all kinds of features that I wanted. And long story short, I got connected to people at Microsoft because I really wanted to tell them about what my desires were. And they were so impressed with everything that I came up with that they asked me if I wanted to become a so-called Microsoft Most Valuable Professional, an MVP. And I was, of course, very honored to be one. I was an MVP for several years. And at the same time, I also discovered how often Microsoft OneNote is used in education. And slowly but surely, I started to focus my efforts about showcasing OneNote features to educators and got involved in the Microsoft education community. And fast forward to today, Microsoft has asked me several years ago if I wanted to organize TweetMeets for Microsoft educators, which I did quite successfully until 2020. After that, I got involved in the Microsoft engineering engagement team, which was very active, especially because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And today, I've been once again invited to restart the TweetMeets for Microsoft Teams for Education. And in addition to that, I have been building a spreadsheet, as we call it, frequent EDU links for educators that I'd like to show you today to see if it's of interest to your audiences.
Fantastic. So lots of great resources to pick up from you today. Do you want to take us into that spreadsheet then for the resources?
Yeah, sure. So this is the start slide of my presentation. It's not that exciting, but it becomes exciting once we switch to a browser where I am showcasing that spreadsheet, which is right here. I've opened the spreadsheet in my web browser. I'm sure we can share the link to this in the notes for this show.
Absolutely.
So this is a spreadsheet that presents itself as a website, and it's called Frequent EDU Links for Microsoft Educators. So just to summarize what it does is, based on our experience working with Microsoft educators, we noticed that it would be most beneficial for them to have multiple resources about a certain topic or a certain product used by Microsoft educators in one place. That's what this is about. And so what you can find here, this is like the home page for the spreadsheet. If you jump to one of the sheets in the spreadsheet, you will immediately see what this is about. So I'm going to jump in to let's say the Microsoft EDU sheet for this spreadsheet, and this shows multiple resources related to Microsoft education. On the left-hand side, you will see a vertical sheet navigator, as we call it, and on the right-hand side are all the links that we've collected that we think are relevant to people who are just diving into Microsoft education.
Right, so that's kind of the categories on the left. Then you can almost pick a category and say, right, I'm interested in guardians and parents. What stuff can we do with guardians and parents in Teams? And then that will filter down to just those links.
Exactly.
So it makes it more digestible, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's not just about Microsoft Teams. We have topics for multiple different products used within Microsoft Education. So, of course, Microsoft Teams plays a major role because it's like the underpinning platform for so many tools nowadays. But it's not just that. It's also Microsoft Edge, for example, and Whiteboard, and so many other tools that we have. And so what you'll see here on the right-hand side for each of those topics, of course, we list the name of the topic, and then for each item, we have the title, the link to that item that you can click on, and also the title and link combined. And at the very first column, you'll notice these emoji that indicate like a category of resource. So if we think a certain category, a certain item is very important, then we list it at the top with a pin icon to indicate this should be, top of mind for everyone who's just starting out with this specific product or category.
So if somebody's looking at this for the first time, that's where you'd start. Is you'd go for the pinned resources. So those are your articles explaining how things work.
Yeah. So you go from generic to specific, or from generic to specific. I think that's the most important way to look at it. And so if you click on one of the other options here on the left, one of the other resources, for example, we have a sheet about dyslexia. And again, you see those same columns appear with the title of the resource, the link that we found for that resource, and also a way for you to copy the title and link combined so that you can share this with others. Yeah. This spreadsheet lives in your browser, and so you can easily open this in any browser you like and also share this out with others. It's free, and we intend to keep maintaining this resource for the near future at least. So
right. I suppose that's the idea, really, isn't it? Because obviously it would be great if every educator, every single teacher in the world got hold of this and started using it. But I mean, in reality, I imagine you're going to have some champions in the schools, champions, in charge of e-learning and blended learning, and perhaps their role within the school would be to cherry pick the things that they think are most important for because they know their colleagues, they know where the gaps are and where the opportunities are.
Exactly. And that's also what we've been hearing from people who have been trying out the spreadsheet over the past months. They have been indeed, as you said, cherry picking and selecting items and then rewrap them in whatever method they prefer. So they share these resources out in Microsoft Teams or in a Sway or in a Wakelet or a Padlet or any other method that they use at that school organization.
And then that's why you've got the title and link combined, because you can literally copy that and paste that into an announcement in the staff team. Or if you've got SharePoint and you've got communication sites with news, you could post that in as a news item, and that link would show up on that news page. Or send an email if you must. That would all work. Yeah.
That's exactly how this works. So in short, this frequent EDU Links spreadsheet is a collection of approximately 1,300 resources that we've been collecting over the past year and a half. And it's been categorized across 80 different topics, things of interest for people who work within Microsoft Education.
Yeah, and again, just to underline, this isn't something that kind of Microsoft or even you have kind of cooked up. This is a pot of information where teachers have fed in. They've said these are the things that are important to us, and that's how you formed these categories and these.
Yes, lists. Well, it's what we found, and also what we extract from blog posts that Microsoft publishes. So if for example, the Minecraft education team publishes a blog post in which they announce a new world, then if we think it's important enough, then we'll include it in this spreadsheet.
That's right. I remember getting very excited about the water update. Was it 1.4.13, and suddenly water works much better in Minecraft, and that got a lot of people excited.
Yeah. So of course we need to decide which updates we do include and which ones we don't. But that's the way we built this, and of course we also listen to feedback that we get from users of this spreadsheet. We actually have a Microsoft Teams team that people are most welcome to join. I will pass on the link to that community to you so that people who, for example, those administrators or technologists who really want to be fully informed about everything going on with the spreadsheet, they can join that community and communicate with us directly.
That's great.
So,
good. So hopefully folks will be downloading this link now. We will put these links in, but it's the frequent EDU links. That's the title to look for if you're gonna Google and or Bing that. Yeah,
exactly. And so what some people ask us is, hey, Marjolein, how do you inform yourself about all these updates? Where do you get all these updates from? And that's actually the second thing I would like to introduce to you and to your audience. It's called the daily Microsoft EdTech newsfeed that I maintain. And let me show you what that looks like, okay? So it is on the next tab. So this is the daily Microsoft EdTech newsfeed. And what this is basically a news page consisting of items from approximately 70 news sources related to Microsoft Education. So these are blog posts, tweets from accounts that belong to Microsoft related to education, and video channels. So for example, you will find tweets by Mike Tolson, tweets by Microsoft EDU, anything that is relevant for Microsoft educators. And so if you, and here at the top, you see a tweet from Microsoft Education UK. So if you go through this, you'll quickly see that it's like a mixed bag of all kinds of items that could be of interest to educators. And you can zoom in to anything that you like. It's just like a combined newspaper for educators. And
just looking at some of the things coming past it, you can see obviously there's tools, product Microsoft tools, but there's kind of definitely lots of pedagogical things. I've seen things there about student voice, the importance of the student's voice, and all that kind of stuff. Some more kind of social aspects, social dimensions, gender equality, all that stuff kind of pops up here. Support for special educational needs, that pops up quite a lot.
Yeah. And so Flipgrid is here, of course, with their live event announcements and so many more things. And also for people who are more into the technical side of things, what we also include are messages from the Office 365 IT Admin Center. And that can also be of interest to people who don't have that role. So, yes.
Some of it is important. A prime example of that kind of thing is, the way that students are able to chat or not chat in Teams, and can students delete? Can they create a comment in a team and then delete it quick? The Snapchat thing, and there are policies for controlling that. So although setting up those policies is very much kind of an IT thing, it's a little bit geeky. It's extremely important to teachers because you don't want that messing up your lessons or your live lessons.
Well, the advantage is also that educators who are a bit more technical inclined can prepare themselves better for what's coming in the near future if they have access to these announcements. So that was one of the reasons why we included those. So are you ready for the third thing that I...
Yes, please. Yeah.
Because as I told you a few minutes ago, Microsoft invited me to relaunch the TweetMeets again last January. And we went with a very big launch in January, inviting all former hosts back for a celebration event on January 18th. And fast forward to today, we just had the February TweetMeet. TweetMeets are our monthly events that we organize, and they are very successful. Well, so just to let's assume your audience doesn't know what TweetMeets are. Let me just start with the beginning.
Yes,
a TweetMeet is basically a conversation on Twitter between educators globally. It's a multilingual conversation, takes place monthly, and we decide the topics together with Microsoft. So in January, we had inclusion equity and inclusion. And in February, just this past week, we discussed hybrid learning. And for March, just to give you an idea, we'll talk about reading fluency and literacy. So let me switch my screen to my TweetMeet account on Twitter so that you can get a feel for what such a conversation looks like, okay?
Great.
So
just while you switch that over, just to say that I did the one. Was it Tuesday? I've slept since, but I think it was Tuesday, wasn't it? The TweetMeet, and it was great. It was such a wonderful collaborative experience. It was social. I tell you what also surprised me is how slow it was. Because you're used to having these kind of conversations, boom, boom, boom. But it was really nice that you could see people were kind of thinking about what they wanted to say, and it was very kind of strategic. Definitely the kind of thing I think senior leaders in a school should be watching, or in a district, in the US, it would be your kind of leaders watching this as well.
That too, and what we are also noticing is we're being followed by quite a few district leaders and school leaders around the world. So it's not just UK and US based, but it's a global thing. And to accommodate to those needs, we have made two major decisions this month. And I'd like to point those two out. And that is, the conversations are now fully multilingual, so anyone can participate in the TweetMeets in the language that they prefer. And secondly, as you noticed, the conversations are now slow chats. So yes, we organize these events once a month at a certain hour in the day, but it's very likely that that hour is not so convenient for everyone who wants to participate, right? Because it's a global conversation. And so that's why we are now very actively advocating that people can participate at any time that suits them best. And for that purpose, we provide a couple of guidelines on how you can do that best. But the most important thing that we are trying to teach people is to use what we call the quote tweet feature in Twitter. And if you allow me, I want to point that out to you real quick.
Yes, please. Yeah.
That'd be appropriate, because this is at the essence of why TweetMeets work a little bit different than other Twitter chats, where people maybe press the reply button to answer to a Twitter chat. But for TweetMeets, we feel that using quote tweets is more appropriate, because your answer will then be glued to the original question. Yes. So allow me to demonstrate this using our Twitter account. So what I've done this week is I've reposted all the questions for this month's TweetMeet in a Twitter thread, and that Twitter thread you can see right here. So of course we start with a request for people to introduce themselves, but that's not that important right now. So let's look at this particular question. Question 1. Let's assume you're in this TweetMeet, or you're joining a little bit later and you want to respond to this question. What we ask people to do is to click on the retweet button and then select quote tweet. That's all there is to it. And then when that comment field appears on Twitter, you can then answer that question, of course, by using the A1 abbreviation to indicate that it's the answer to question 1, and then type your comment. And lastly, what we really appreciate if people do this is to include the hashtag, because that helps us to build the analytics for our event. Microsoft asks us to produce some numbers, right?
Yeah.
So we have a hashtag, and that hashtag is Teams EDU Chat.
There we go. Right, so to take that back again, then just make sure I've got that right. Because normally, as you say, you'd go in, you go, oh, somebody said something, I'm going to reply to that. I'm quite angry about that, actually, or I'm quite excited about that. I'm going to reply to that. And that will be fine. But I imagine after a while, the replies, especially the replies to the replies to the replies, get quite disconnected from the original question.
That's the whole issue that we're trying to solve. So what we're trying to do is to, well, actually there are multiple reasons to use quote tweets. Let me summarize. So firstly, your response deserves to get its own permalink. If you just retweet someone's tweet or you reply to someone's tweet, you're basically amplifying that person's presence on Twitter and not your own, because your replies are buried on your profile in the second tab on your profile.
So you're hanging off of that person's thoughts, if you like.
So,
okay.
What I'm saying is your response to a discussion question, it deserves to be a conversation of its own, and by turning it into a separate tweet thread, you allow others to communicate with you about that subject instead of your response only being in relation to someone else's thread.
Yeah, so it's almost like the teachers think it's almost like when you come into a lesson and you write the question on the whiteboard. It's big, and then any kind of responses, they're all happening in the context of that big question that you've posted there as a nice big purple image, and so it stays together. But still, those things aren't separate, are they? Because you've added the @TeamsEDU chat hashtag.
Yeah,
that still keeps everything together.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's not an @ sign, it's a hashtag, so a hash symbol, and of course people can also add any hashtags for the topic. For example, for last Tuesday's event, we had hybrid learning as a single hashtag, and for the coming TweetMeet, which will be on March 22nd, by the way, the hashtags will be reading, fluency, and literacy. So that's what we'll be discussing.
So you could just do hashtag TeamsEDU chat, and that would associate it with the general kind of channel, although that's completely the wrong word to use. But if you wanted to be more specific, you could then also do hash hybrid learning or hash reading resources or reading support or anything you want. Hash bananas, as long as it's relevant to
exactly
what you're talking about.
Yeah,
that's brilliant. And that's the power of Twitter, isn't it? Because comparing that, for example, to other platforms, you could do the Facebook thing. Facebook, very much somebody posts something, it's replies all the way down, and that's how you do it. Whereas I think Twitter is much more hash centric, shall we say, in that you're kind of tagging things in a way that makes them easy to find later on.
That is a very sharp observation. I hadn't thought of that.
Thank you. That's the one I've used it up to today now. That's my sharp observation for the day.
Yeah. I find that, well, I do feel there is quite a difference between conversations on Twitter and conversations on Facebook. But maybe that's also, I just have a preference for Twitter myself. I'm not saying I grew up here, but I've been a Twitter user for 16 years now or so. So yeah. No,
it's horses for courses, I suppose. The Facebook, as you know, I do a lot of Facebook conversations on the Microsoft EDU and the Teams EDU stuff as well. And generally, there's a question that's come up. A teacher has posted a question. This has happened. My students are kicking me out of my own meetings. What do I do? And then you answer that, and then somebody else will kind of add a bit more detail and say, oh, you can your IT guys can do that with PowerShell or something. But the problem with that is it's all very kind of self-contained, and it gets very specific. It's almost like question, answer, problem, answer, that kind of thing. Whereas in the Twitter, what I found doing the TweetMeet, it seems to be much more strategic. It seems to be much more kind of thinky. And so that's why I think it is great for those senior leaders. Because if you're not thinking about, what's my favorite font, if you're not down at that level, but if you're thinking, how am I going to get students to be independent learners? How am I going to promote the student voice? Those things seem to work really, really well with this TweetMeet approach.
Yes, and also because of the advanced search capabilities that Twitter provides, you can search for keywords that people have used, or you could also connect to any of the what I haven't even mentioned is TweetMeets are not led by me, but they are led by expert hosts that I recruit in advance and that I train together with my team to get ready for event time. And those people are selected based on their expertise in that month's topic. And so this also allows people to find like-minded people, set up collaboration projects with other educators or school leaders. And so what we're seeing is that quite a few of those projects are born through the TweetMeets. And I've actually, just as an anecdote, one of the things that people told me is when they visit EdTech events such as BET in London or one of the main shows in the US, they come across people who have also been a TweetMeet host, and then they get into a picture and send me a shot of all the TweetMeet hosts that have gathered to celebrate their experience with us. So yeah,
of course, because that's the wonder of kind of global social media, because you don't have to find people in the same town as you anymore, or even the same county or local authority or district. You can find like-minded people who are interested in the same things as you everywhere. And you know what? They don't even have to be in the same language. I found that quite interesting. A lot of the tweets were in English because I think it's a common language, but you can sort of specify what language you want to work in on those TweetMeets.
Yeah.
And then you can say, I only want to see English, or I only want to see Dutch answers.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's what we're trying to advocate as much as possible, to make this an inclusive experience for everyone. So we encourage everyone, if you are reading someone's message and you're not quite familiar with that language, for example, because English is not your native language, to click on the translate tweet button, and then so that it's translated into your language. And then from then on, you can just respond in whatever language you prefer. And we've actually just received the reports from this past TweetMeet, and we've seen contributions in over 10 languages once again. So yeah, it's quite fun to see that how that idea spreads.
That's great. And as you say, it's not a barrier. First of all, you can choose to see your own languages for a bit, but if you're looking at a particular thread and you think, well, I really want to get to the bottom of this, I really need to know the answer to these questions that have been raised, and you see somebody there has written something in German or Dutch, and you think, I'm a bit rusty on the old German, you can translate it, and the translation engines are good now, right? It's not like the old days.
It's a pass. How do you say that? Passable. Yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, that's fantastic. So we've covered quite a lot of ground. We'll put these links out again at the end of this video. But just to say, as a recap, we've got the resources spreadsheet, the EDU Links spreadsheet. We've got the various blogs by Microsoft that kind of come together. And you've got the TweetMeets, and I would just recommend to anybody that gets a chance to do this on the 22nd of March, or indeed on the 23rd of March, because it doesn't matter if you come late to the party, you can still contribute because the party's going on. There's an after party for the TweetMeets as well.
Yeah, that's the advantage of moving toward a slow chat approach, and that's what we're doing right now. Oh, and by the way, I wanted to tell you, I forgot. One of the new things with the TweetMeets that we are starting to do, we actually did one in February, beginning of February. We organized a webinar about the topic of the TweetMeet and about TweetMeets themselves. So for anyone who's new to the TweetMeets or new to the topic of the TweetMeets, this is the way to connect with us and to connect with the host, ask questions. It's an interactive webinar, so not just a presentation by the host or anything. We actually allow people to use their microphone and use their webcam to connect with us, and that is a very welcome addition to the TweetMeets program.
Just another channel, isn't it? Another way of getting into the content.
Reaching out. Actually, we were surprised how many people appreciated this initiative, so we'll keep organizing those.
Oh, brilliant! So, Marjolein, thank you for the work that you're doing, because I know it's been a challenge for teachers, and the challenge continues and will continue. But having these kind of resources centralized, making it easily digestible for teachers, places where they can come and talk about teaching and learning and pedagogy and wonderful things like that. Thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time to spend with us today.
Lovely. Thank you so much for the invitation, Darren.